Hey, I want to welcome everyone back to the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast. I am your host, David Flores, CEO of Global Trac Solutions. And today I'm very excited. I get an opportunity to feature an organization that I've been following for several months, and an organization that really over the last 12 months has played a critical role in really the ongoing development and emergence of the psychedelic industry. The organization is the Conscious Fund, and today I have the privilege of being joined by one of the co-founding members, Henri Sant-Cassia. Henri, thank you so much for taking time to join me. How are you doing today?
Thank you, David. Very well. We're super busy. The industry is still exploding, but very well. And it's the right kind of busy. So I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're very excited to have you on. And before we kick things off, just full disclosure, Global Trac Solutions is a very proud investor in the Conscious Fund. But as we always do here on the Psychedelic Spotlight podcast, we promise to keep things fair and unbiased as we present the information and the facts to you. So now that that's out of the way, Henri, I want to open up the platform to you, give you an opportunity to share a little bit about who the Conscious Fund is, what it's specifically involved in here in the psychedelic space, and maybe what was the genesis behind its establishment. If you could share that with us, that'd be fantastic.
So to kind of start at the beginning of the story, my two partners, Richard Scaife and Michael Hoyos, and I have always used psychedelic compounds, been interested in the science behind them, and we've always seen a wider application than what was, 5 or 6 years ago, a purely recreational market. I think if you use these compounds, you understand the depth of their effect on the brain, the game-changing, I know that's an overused word, but the game-changing nature of these compounds. And we felt, this is going back now 2 years, that an industry was going to develop, and that industry would be directed by the flows of capital. And it was very important that as entrepreneurs came up with ideas, as research projects found new uses of psychedelics, that there was a fund that could back those projects early, help them to develop, scale, and also allow investors to take a balanced portfolio-based approach to the market. The compounds are very complicated. The science is very heavy duty. And we didn't feel that this was a market necessarily where you'd want to be dabbling as an individual investor. There's a lot of, due diligence. There's a lot of heavy lifting required really to analyze investments. There's good money to be made, playing public markets, but in terms of getting in early and seeing dramatic upside, the only vehicle we thought was viable was a fund structure, and we created the fund roughly a year ago, and we've just had the first close of it on December the 31st of last year, and Global Trac, we were delighted, came in on that, and now we're expanding our operation, we're raising more money, and our goal really is to enable the transformation of certain types of healthcare. So mental health, addiction, and chronic pain, which are the three cornerstones of the psychedelic medicine industry.
Right, most definitely. And you mentioned due diligence, as we here at Global Trac Solutions, myself was going through that due diligence process, really looking and exploring, the fund itself. The one thing that really struck me and encouraged me the most, I think, was the diversification that you guys have been able to implement into the fund and into the portfolio. Companies that are in the research and development side of things, you've got companies in the media side, as well as companies that are developing very fascinating digital tools. And, as someone that comes from the cannabis industry like myself and was a part of the development of that industry from the beginning, the one thing that I recognized was all of the different sectors that sort of branched out from the industry itself. And I think we have an opportunity to see the same thing happen here within the psychedelic space. And it appears you guys recognize that as well. You want to talk to me a little bit about the impetus behind bringing in some of these companies that you have in your portfolio? I mean, you're talking about Magic Med Industries, the Thai Life Sciences, Cybin, some very impressive companies under that umbrella. But do you want to talk to me about what that selection process looks like as you guys are looking at companies to bring in under the portfolio?
Yeah, so diversification obviously is important to investors in that it mitigates risk, it gives them balanced exposure. So there's an underlying venture metric behind diversification. It's got some other very clear benefits. One is you're able to build an ecosystem. So if you've got a drug discovery company in your portfolio and you have a clinic chain, you're able to cover both sides of the equation vis-a-vis the patient. So the drugs themselves, the second setting in which they're delivered, and the whole therapeutic environment. And often there are genuine synergies between companies. To give you an example, if we look at the 4 companies that we've just invested into, they're very diverse. So Magic Med is an IP library, and the point of that company is to create new patentable compounds that are then sold to drug discovery companies. And that enables drug discovery companies, number one, to have a molecule that they can have patent protection over, and number two, to begin the discovery process quicker because they haven't fiddled around with trial and error and looking at different compounds. And it's a method for accelerating drug discovery, and ultimately the patient will get the drug faster if you can accelerate that. So Magic Med plays very much into the other companies that we've invested into that are in drug discovery, like Cybin or Numinous or Gilgamesh or Tai. It's an enabler. It's also an unusual model, and that's why we've got it in the portfolio. And in fact, that was roughly, I don't know, 15, 20 times oversubscribed when we went in. So there was a lot of interest in that company. Another one is Albert Labs. Magic Med is going public this year, incidentally. Albert Labs is also going public. That's a different type of drug discovery company that uses a protocol called real-world evidence. And that means instead of a 7-year drug development cycle and a clinical trial path, you're able to take an unmet clinical need, in Albert Labs' case, initially that's cancer-related anxiety and depression, produce a solution to that, and through the real-world evidence protocol, actually get it into patients' hands within months and start getting the kind of real feedback that you need to tailor a drug to a condition. And again, that's synergistic because that idea of real-world evidence is relatively new, particularly within psychedelics. And that's the kind of expertise that Albert Labs can share with other drug discovery companies. Another synergistic play of the 4 is April the 19th, and that is using artificial intelligence to speed up compound selection and trials. It's run by Professor Saran Guntalaki. He's actually the professor that taught the team that created DeepMind that was just acquired by Google. So he's kind of the geek's geek, and I hope you'll forgive me for saying that. Very, very powerful technology. And the reason for it is very simple. If you look at the number of possible psychedelic compounds, it's a near infinite number. Now, if you've got a drug discovery company, you've got any kind of therapeutic project, traditionally, you have to comb through possible compounds by trial and error. And the likelihood of you finding a viable compound is actually quite low. You've got an AI system that's effectively 100 PhDs in a box. You can crunch millions of those possible compounds. And let's say you were tackling borderline personality syndrome, you can find by machine learning a compound that is likely to unlock that condition much sooner. And that will save you millions of dollars, years of development. So also synergistic. And the last company is Traumatic Brain Injury. It's made therapeutics. It's run by Daniel Carcillo, who's an ex-professional hockey player. And that we loved, because that was using psychedelics for physical brain injury. Um, we found that fascinating in that it's one of the kind of projects on the outer limits of what's possible with psychedelics. It's not just, you know, a mistaken thinking or thought pattern. It's an actual damaged brain that you're hoping to knit back together to really oversimplify what they're doing using psychedelics. He's also a very big advocate for people with traumatic brain injury. Um, and we added that to the portfolio for a variety of reasons. But those four investments give you an idea of balance, synergy, and choosing projects that are not copycats. Canada is currently full of copycat psilocybin depression projects. As a fund, it's also about selecting the outliers, and the ones that are really going to make an impact.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, that diversification that you guys have in the portfolio is very, very impressive. And the decision making that has gone behind all of it, hand selecting these different companies, that to me is what encourages me so much about, the strength, at least in my opinion, that you guys have put together here with the portfolio. 2020 is finally behind us. Obviously, it was a challenging year, one that we won't soon forget. But if there was one positive takeaway from it, I think was the progress that the psychedelic space made. You had Compass Pathways that had a very successful IPO that I really think sent a very strong and direct message to the investment community that this industry is in fact here, it's primed, it's ready. You also had the passage of Measure 109 in Oregon, again, furthering, the path ahead here for the industry itself. And then all the different stories, you mentioned Daniel Carcillo, his story coming out on HBO. We've seen Mike Tyson come out and put his name behind, psychedelics. All of that has really lent a level of really solid credibility to the industry itself. With all of that behind us now, and us being here at the beginning of 2021, what do you see ahead here for the industry, and what do you see ahead here for the Conscious Fund as you move forward here in the new year?
For the industry, I think you're going to see some major IPOs this year. Atai Life Sciences is kind of the open secret, which will dwarf Compass in terms of market cap. So a lot more mainstream interest on the investor side. I think you're also going to see a deluge of smaller entities, particularly coming out of Canada. I think you're going to see a globalization as well. We have seen already, even in the first 2 weeks of this year, coming up for 3, deals coming out of non-North American sources. I don't want to be more specific than that, but where it was very much Canada, couple of US, maybe one in Europe, probably 20% of the deal flow that we've had so far this year has been global. And I think you're about to see some new non-North American hotspots for companies, which echoes the kind of research landscape, which is very much global. And I also think that the mainstream interest, HBO was just the beginning. There will be an increasing number of celebrities of all stripes that are using psychedelics. And I think that the mainstream media, both the financial media and also more broadly, the media in general, will start covering psychedelics less as a kind of, here's something interesting, to fill 5 minutes, look at these wacky psychonauts, and more as an ordinary part of the healthcare system. And that is what is going to give the whole industry a giant value inflection. It's the day when your grandmother, your lawyer, the local policeman are going down the road to have some kind of psychedelic assisted therapy, that the industry will really hit the mainstream. And although we're a few years away from that, the beginning of that wave is happening now. For the funds, we've got 2 huge incubated projects which are currently under wraps. Those we hope will be in the $1 billion plus category by the time they go public, or they get to say a Series B, C, a bit further down the track. Those are very substantial projects with very large teams on them. And in terms of our investments, we have another close coming up at the end of March. We're on target to raise a further $12 million. And we will be looking for another mix of early stage companies, seed companies to invest into. And also we hope some more Series A investments. And I think this for early stage investors is going to be a different year. Last year, the Series A were few and far between. This year, the chunkier, bigger Series A rounds, I think, will be more numerous. And that's a chance for us to deploy bigger sums, lead some rounds. And we also expect at least 2, if not more, of our portfolio to go public in the next 12 months. So it's going to be a very exciting year. And I think finally, you'll also see some very interesting next generation plays within the industry. So hybrid psychedelics, where you've got 2 compounds mixed together, mixtures of psychedelics and ordinary medicines, new synthetics. And we know of at least 2 new natural psychedelics that haven't been discovered, but haven't been exploited yet, that I think will come out into the general market, and these plants will turn lots of heads. So look out for that in the coming 12 months.
Yeah, I think it's apparent we've only begun to scratch the surface here, as far as the potential that exists here in the psychedelic space. So it's very exciting indeed. We're very excited to be a part of all of it, and of course be an investor here in the Conscious Fund. For any other individuals out there that may be in the investment community, is there still a way for them to get involved here in the Conscious Fund?
Yes, the fund is filling pretty quickly, but we are very keen to talk to investors. The fund is still open. And we're also keen to get conversations going with investors more broadly, because there are lots of co-investment opportunities, incubated projects, and other interesting developments beyond the fund that we'd love to talk to people about. And also just, learn more about how investors have found the industry, what questions they've got, where they think there are gaps. So we're very keen to talk to investors, and they're welcome to contact us through our website, and we'll spin up some conversations, I hope, in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. And we'll be sure to get all the contact information added in here to this as well. So if anybody has any questions or wants to contact the Conscious Fund directly, they'll be able to do that. But Henri, thank you so much for taking time to join me. This was a great first introduction here. I look forward to keeping in touch with you, having you on the podcast again. I know there's going to be a lot to talk about here over 2021, so very excited to move ahead. But again, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, David. Thank you very much. Have a great week, and I'm sure we'll talk very, very soon. Thank you.
Most definitely. Thank you.